Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where the Russians during the night between the 1st and the 2nd of July of 2026 carried out a mega strike. Today's attack on Kyiv was the largest since the start of the war. Standing in front of the city's ruins, it was stated that most missiles and drones were shot down, and this was stated by the mayor of the city of Kyiv. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine reported that during the overnight attack, the Russians used 570 air vehicles to attack the territory of Ukraine, and more precisely, the Russians were almost only attacking the city of Kyiv. The Russians used 496 drones to attack the city of Kyiv and the territory of Ukraine, and 74 missiles of different types. According to information we have, the Russians were using different types of weapons, and in this video, for example, we can see how exactly the Russians were bombing the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, and during this attack we can see lots of missiles of different types, we can see lots of explosions. The sources reported that the Russians were using cruise missiles of Ha-101 type, the Russians were using cruise-tip missiles of Banderol type, the Russians were using Kalibr missiles, the Russians were using hypersonic missiles of Zircon type. As a result of this mega overnight attack, the Russians managed to deal significant damage to objects of energy infrastructure, to objects of military infrastructure and military facilities. This morning, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that during the previous night, during the overnight attack, the Russians destroyed lots of military facilities, military enterprises that the Ukrainians were using to produce equipment and the most important drones of different types for the armed forces of Ukraine. So let's discuss the most important places that were struck by Russians, and first let's talk about the northwestern parts of the city of Kyiv. According to information we have, the Russians attacked the Poshta post terminal in Obolon district. This terminal has been completely destroyed, and that was one of the largest logistics hubs in the capital that has been wiped out. Another important territory is this one. According to information we have, the Russians destroyed an oil storage facilities located at these coordinates. The facilities and nearby warehouses created the largest thermal signature in Kyiv. In this video we can see these oil depots that were burning, and the fire crews during the nights were trying to extinguish the fire, but it seems that these oil storage facilities were completely wiped out as a result of the mega attack that was carried out by Russians. These barracks and these facilities were also destroyed, and these pictures were published this morning. Most likely, and according to the Russians, the Ukrainians were using these facilities to produce drones. At least the Russians reported that some of the military enterprise that was struck by Russians, the Ukrainians used to produce flamingo drones that the Ukrainians were using to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. Moving further, and we're moving in the western direction of the city of Kyiv, and here we have this logistic hub, and in this video we can see fire crews that were trying to extinguish the fire, and as you can see, according to this video, this facility was completely reduced to ruins as a result of the overnight mega attack. And for example, in this video we can see trucks. The sources reported that there were dozens of trucks on the territory of this facility that were destroyed by Russians. Maybe the Russians managed to gather information that the Ukrainians were equipping these trucks with drones with the purpose to send them later in the eastern direction with the purpose to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. Furthermore, several facilities were destroyed on the territory of the settlement of Vasilkov, and in this video we can see a fire anomaly that was recorded through this territory. Maybe this is not the consequences of attack, maybe the Russian missile was flying, maybe a Russian missile was flying in the direction of the city of Kyiv, but was brought down by the Ukrainians right exactly at this point. And we have several facilities destroyed through the eastern parts of the city of Kyiv, several facilities connected to enterprises and companies that were responsible for purchasing and buying cars from Europe and from different countries. Lots of explosions, lots of attacks, and the most important, lots of pictures and videos were published on this matter. In this video we can see a building that was almost completely destroyed as a result of attack that took place not even against the building, but the Russians probably missed the target and attacked the territory around the building, but this explosion led to almost complete destruction of this construction. We have a lots of videos that were published this morning where we can see a big smoke over the city of Kyiv. Probably some object of fuel infrastructure was destroyed by Russians. So during the night and during this morning we received lots of pictures on this matter, lots of pictures where we can see the consequences of attack. And obviously we can say that this attack was indeed the biggest attack since the beginning of the special military operation on the city of Kyiv, but not the biggest attack when talking about the entire territory of Ukraine. The Russians, there were some cases when the Russians were using more than 800 of drones and missiles altogether during one wave of attack. Today the Russians use just 570. So when talking about Ukraine, it's a massive attack, but when talking about the city of Kyiv, that was obviously a mega attack. And of course, this morning, different sources published lots of pictures, lots of maps where we can see the approximate roads of missiles and drones that were attacking the territory of Ukraine. And according to this picture, we see that the Russians were attacking the territory of Ukraine from the northern, northeastern, from the eastern, southeastern, and the southern directions of Ukraine. But the most important thing that the Russians used the same pattern of attack that we saw during the 14th and the 15th of June of 2026. I would like to ask you to save this picture in your mind. So this is the picture of the overnight attack between the 1st and the 2nd of July of 2026. And if we remind updates to the 15th of June of 2026, we would see almost the same picture. So as you can see, the Russians between the 14th and the 15th of June of 2026 attacked the same way as the Russians attacked during the previous night between the 1st and the 2nd of July, which means that this pattern works and most likely the Russians will continue using this pattern. This is the first thing. The second thing, we see that the drones that were launched by Russians from the southern regions were brought down by the Ukrainians during the previous attack and between the 15th and the 14th of June of 2026, and the drones launched by Russians from the southern regions were also brought down by the Ukrainians and during the previous overnight attack. So as you can see, there are several options. Either the Russians were launching decoys with the purpose to overload Ukraine's radars and Ukraine's air defense systems, or the Russians were trying to hit objects from the south, but the missiles and drones that were launched by the Russians from the southern directions were completely wiped out by the Ukrainians. But we can't say the same thing about northern attacks. As you can see, the missiles and drones that were launched from Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod regions managed to hit badly the city of Kyiv, dealing significant damage. And according to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the Russians once again used 74 missiles to attack the territory of Ukraine, and according to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, they managed to bring down just 20, which means that 54 missiles and drones, missiles of different types of the armored forces of the Russian Federation, managed to hit a target and to deal significant damage. As of the current situation, as of the current video, we haven't discussed every single target that was attacked by Russians. There are more targets. We believe that during this day, during the 2nd of July, we will receive additional details on this matter, and maybe during the next evening update, we will discuss what kind of facilities and what kind of enterprises were attacked by Russians during this overnight attack. Another important detail I would like to point to your attention is the position of drones of the armored force of of the Russian Federation during the night. Once again, the Russians were attacking the territory of Ukraine from the north using different types of weapons and drones, and from the south. Another important thing that Ukrainians noted, and they stated that during this overnight attack, the Russians were using Gerans not of the first, the second, and the third generations. The Russians were using jet drones of the fourth and the fifth generations. So according to these pictures, we see yellow triangles are the drones of the previous generation. So it's drones of Geran type. So the Russian drones that they started using since 2022. When talking about blue triangles, these are the drones of the next or the new generation of the Russian forces. And these are jet drones that the Russians, as we can see, began using significantly. For example, if we compare these pictures of positions of drones with the pictures between the 14th and the 15th of June of 2026, we would see that the Russians increased the number of jet drones significantly. Another important thing, that these jet drones that were launched by Russians, these blue triangles, were moving along the border with the Republic of Belarus, which means that we believe that due to these flight routes, we believe that during the overnight attack, the Russians were using the retranslators and communication equipment that was installed by Russians along the border between Belarus and Ukraine. If you remember, several days ago, Zelensky stated that the Belarusians turned off this equipment. This equipment, later Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Sirski, reported that the Belarusians turned this equipment on again, and it seems that during the overnight attack, the Russians were using this equipment effectively. Lots of explosions, lots of missiles, lots of drones, but one important thing, according to our raw estimations and calculations, it was expected that the Russians would use probably 1,000 of drones or even more during the overnight mega attack, but the Russians used just 496 drones, which means that the Russians still have capabilities to repeat the massive attack or the mega attack between the 2nd and the 3rd of July, and the Russians have capabilities most likely to continue massive or mega attacks during the next several days. This is the most important thing, that the Russians, despite the fact that they used 74 missiles and almost 500 of drones, still have thousands of drones and probably dozens of missiles that they stored and decided to keep for future attacks or for further operations. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground and with other parts of Ukraine. During the previous nights and during the 2nd of July already, the Russians were attacking more objects across the entire territory of Ukraine. As for the city of Sumy, today we received the video how the Russians attacked another gas station in the central part of the city. This video was published by the Group of Forces North, and here we can see how the Russians destroyed a gas station on the territory of the city, and this is another gas station destroyed by Russians, and we see that the Russians continue this process. As for the cities of Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro, the Russians attacked facility in the eastern parts of the city of Zaporizhzhia. This territory was attacked, and as you can see from this angle, we can see lots of trucks on the territory of this facility, and indeed the Russians attacked this logistic hub and this service center that the Ukrainians were using probably to equip trucks with drones with the purpose to attack later deep inside of the territory of Russia. So as you can see, a very important service center or logistic hub was wiped out by Russians also during the overnight attack. So this is another step from the Russian side with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to move their launching sites as deep as possible in the direction of the western parts of Ukraine. The city of Dnipro, explosions were recorded through the settlement this morning during the 2nd of July of 2026, when the Ukrainian authorities officially ended the mega attack. As a result of attack, black smoke wiped black smoke broke out right after the Russians attacked the territory. The Mykolaiv direction, the sources reported that explosions were recorded through the city of Mykolaiv. As you can see, black smoke broke out right after. And the settlement of Nova Odessa, a terminal and logistic hub or some service center, was attacked by Russians. This video was published this morning. Here we can see barracks that most likely the Ukrainians, according to the Russian intelligence information, were using probably to improve drones or something like this, was wiped out by Russians during the overnight attack between the 1st and the 2nd of July of 2026. The settlement of Snegurovka, another warehouse, was destroyed by Russians as a result of attack. This time we're talking about this service center and about this post office terminal. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked lots of facilities through the entire territory of Ukraine, but without entering the western parts of Ukraine. And it seems that maybe in coming days we will receive, the Russians would attack the western parts of Ukraine as well. Now let's talk about the Ukrainian side. According to information we have, during the previous night, the Ukrainians also attacked deep inside of the territory of Russia using hundreds of drones. The Ukrainians used 350 drones to attack the territory of the Russian Federation, and the sources reported that the Ukrainians were attacking the city of Kstovo, more precisely the Kstovo oil refinery. And this morning we received lots of pictures and videos on this matter, and according to these videos and pictures, we see that the Ukrainians managed to hit the Kstovo oil refinery and probably to destroy several oil tanks or fuel tanks on the territory of the city and this facility. And these are more pictures published by locals from the territory of the settlement, which means that, as you can see, the Ukrainians attacked the territory of Russia at the same time when the Russians were attacking the territory of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians did that with the purpose to use the shield or to shield of Russian drones and missiles as a protection, with the purpose to break through Russia's air defense systems and layers, with the purpose to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia and to damage another oil refinery terminal. So this is the situation with massive strikes carried out both by Russians and the Ukrainians. And now let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first we're going to talk about the Kupyansk direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos from this area and we have changes. Pro-Russian sources continue publishing more and more videos from the area of the city of Kupyansk, where we can see dozens of Russian soldiers that were patrolling the territory to the east of the river Oskol. The Russians once again confirmed that they have strong control over the eastern bank of Oskol between the cities of Kucherevka, Podol, Petropavlovka, Kupyansk and Kupyansk-Uzlovoy. All these icons that you can see right now in front of your screens, marked with yellow ring, are the territories where Russians were recorded. Furthermore, the Russians were also recorded through the central part of the settlement of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy, and here we can see Russians that were moving through the settlement of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy with trying to find, probably to secure the territory, and just to show that this part of the city of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy is also under complete and strong control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And these are the changes on the ground between the dates. So this is the end of the 30th of June of 2026. During the 30th of June, we still had some territories colored with yellow, but as of the beginning of the 2nd of July, the territories marked with yellow color are much less in comparison with the previous days. Now let's move further. Another important area is the Lyman direction. As you may know, these days pro-Ukrainian sources publish lots of reports that the Ukrainians began a counter-offensive operation in this area, and as a result of this counter-offensive operation, the Ukrainians managed to force the Russians to fall back from their positions, that the Ukrainians managed to almost completely recapture these territories to the north of the city of Lyman. But today pro-Russian sources published at least two videos where we can see dozens of episodes with Russian soldiers in this area. Yes, the Russians don't risk, the Russians try to stay safe, try to stay protected against Ukrainian drones and so on, but we have too many episodes in this area that confirm that Russians have strong control over the territories where the Ukrainians were counterattacking. Maybe there are pockets of resistance and separate sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of Ukraine that managed to break through Russia's defense and so on, but it doesn't change the situation. The Russians are still there, and the Russians right now are trying to find these sabotage and reconnaissance groups and to force them to fall back from these territories. As for the city of Konstantinovka, small changes were recorded through the northern parts of the settlement in the Chervony micro-district. This information was prepared by neutral mappers. As for the Dobropolye direction, small changes were recorded around the cities of Pokrovsk, Mirnograd and Grishina. According to these changes, the Russians continue advancing further in the direction of Sergeyevka from the east and from the south, and the Russians managed to answer the settlement of Shevchenka. And this is probably the most important situation, because this village of Shevchenka is a part of defense layer of the city of Dobropolye to the south, between these villages like Vadyanska, Svetlaya, Cherginovka and so on. And if Russians answered the village, this means that the battle for these villages has begun. As for the Zaporizhzhia direction, during the previous 12 hours we haven't received anything special, just several videos published by pro-Russian sources of how the armed forces of the Russian Federation were bombing the city of Orikhiv with aviation, trying to soften Ukraine's defense. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.